Good afternoon and welcome. We have arrived at 2 o'clock, and so we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our first member webinar of 2020. I hope you are as excited as I am for today's topic on mental health and to welcome our featured guest, Mettie Spiess. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm especially grateful for the timeliness of this National Month of Awareness and Observation. While 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness during their lifetime, everyone faces challenges in life that can impact their mental health. And I imagine many of you have this top of mind now more than ever amid the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar is for you. It's customized and curated based on your needs and your specific questions. So before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items and reminders that I want to touch on. First and foremost, please know and remember that the WCWI staff is here to fully support you and your organization through the circumstance of COVID and, of course, through the evolution of your well-being strategies. There are several resources available to you. Our Staying Resilient page on our website is updated continuously. We have one-on-one member consultations available and our monthly member resource groups, to name a few. Also, just want to call your attention to a snapshot of your member benefits that are available to you at all times, of course. The items that are highlighted in color are new enhancements to your membership experience that some of you may have engaged in already, and then some others that will be launched and available to you over the next several weeks. Our member webinars this year, excitedly, are also approved for continuing education credits through SHRM, NWI, and CHES. If you are seeking continuing education credits for this webinar, please watch for the follow-up email in which we will include a post survey to capture the information needed to provide you with your CEUs. And please save the date for this month's May member resource group coming up on Thursday, May 28th. We are excited to have joining us a friend of WCWI and a face and name, an individual that many of you know. Laura Putnam will be joining as one of our idea sharers for the May member resource group. She will be touching on the concept that there is no me without you, and Lisa and Laura will have some engaging discussion for all of our members that join that group regarding the cultural and environmental influences of our larger environment. So please join us for that, save the date. And one more exciting new member benefit that we are really officially and publicly launching today is WCWI's Expert Contributor Network. So WCWI is continuously seeking opportunities to support our member employers better and better with creativity and uniqueness. And we have sought leaders in a variety of well-being specialties to partner as our Expert Contributor Network. The individuals that will be a part of our Expert Contributor Network really had to fit 3 main criteria. 1, they are all aligned with our values, vision, and mission. They are Wisconsin-based specialists in their field so that they are uniquely understanding of the needs of Wisconsin's workforce. And the 3rd criteria is that they have a specialty, a special proficiency in a well-being subject area. And the real benefit comes in our partnership with these experts to be able to then pass on to you, our members, exclusive access to webinars, other learning opportunities, expert interviews, and customized well practices and more that are co-created with our expert contributors. And wonderful to announce that our expert guest for today's webinar is actually our first announcement of WCWI's expert contributor. So Mettie Spiess is joining us as an expert contributor, and she is dubbed as the Stigma Crusher and has impacted over 20 industries across 35 countries successfully through utilization of her proven voice value vigilance process to support employee mental well-being and reduce the risk of crisis. Blending her personal experience as a suicide loss survivor and her professional expertise, Mettie founded A World Without Suicide to help employers protect their mental well-being of their valued employees. Now, before Mettie takes it away for today's question and answer webinar, I do want to summarize briefly what we learned from you all in the pre-survey to this webinar experience. So we heard from you from over 27% of our members responded to this survey. Of those, the top industries represented are healthcare service provider, manufacturing, public entities, wellness providers, and education. And we asked we asked one question about where mental health falls in the priority of your organization right now. Optimistically, 73% of you responded that mental health has always been a priority, but right now you are recognizing it even more. And 24% said that mental health has recently shifted to a priority, whereas previously it was not. We also asked what is the largest barrier that you experience in your organization, and 25% of the responses shed light on the fact that the largest barrier for you all is embedding mental and emotional well-being into the culture of your organization beyond simply the programs and resources that you provide. And then the other largest barrier noted, 24% of you responded that stigma is the largest barrier. And then the one more question that I wanted to highlight, because I think it's foundational to a lot of what Mettie is going to touch on today. We asked across a variety of focus areas for you to rank importance for the different areas that you would like to learn more about. And the focus area ranked as most important, resoundingly, was communication strategies to support and reduce stigma. We also had little over 30 total questions submitted for the purpose of today's Q&A webinar. Now, we admittedly cannot, within the time frame, get through all 30 questions, but what we did is we worked closely with Mettie to identify these 4 themes that came through in the questions that were submitted. And Mettie curated from there the specific questions that she's going to touch on across each of these 4 themes. And so with that, I am going to open it up to Mettie, and we will hear from her.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. And Marissa, it just says that I cannot share my screen while others are participating. So let me just try it again and see. Oh, now we're good to go. Perfect. All right. So we'll get this pulled up. And can you see it okay? Good to go.
Yes, I am seeing it well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm thrilled to partner with WCWI as an expert contributor and also to talk about such a critical area of health that, as we know, is top of mind for most employers. So I'm going to jump right in because we have lots of questions to answer, as well as 14 strategies specifically I'll be sharing with you that relate, and we also have some resources that will support you. So one logistic I'll cover before I jump right in, which is if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to chat. Use the chat function. We'll get to as many of those as we can towards the end of the presentation. And I'll also share my contact information if any of you need to reach out for additional clarification, resources, etc. All right. So the first question being, what are the best ways to support the anxiety, worry, all of the stressors that COVID has brought in? And in what seems to be almost overnight, the entire workplace landscape changed. And whether you're supporting employees who are balancing work at home, or you have frontline employees that are dealing with a very essential fear of contracting COVID, we know that the needs are unique. So the first strategy I'll give is that instead of guessing what might be the best support strategy that you can utilize right now, it's to ask your population. And there are some no cost, simple ways to do that. And an employer we actually started working with this month is SurveyMonkey. And through our work with them, we realized that they had amazing no cost resources to give to employers who also were prioritizing mental health. So my team member Sam Van Nuys already dropped 2 links in the chat. One is to an 8-step guide to launching an employee survey and support campaign, and then also a link to several surveys that are totally free and that you can also customize to find out what is the biggest worry of your population. Now that safer at home bans are being lifted, what specifically do your employees need to feel safe at work? And then taking that data and strategically addressing them as needed. The second strategy to help answer this question is to provide access to support through diverse outreach channels. And this is important because just like there's different leadership styles and different management styles, there's different outreach styles. So if we're only handing out a 1-800 number as an example, some people aren't comfortable utilizing that option. And if we meet employees where they're the most comfortable, the more likely they can get the desperate, in some cases, desperate support, some in proactive support that they need through this time. So there's a variety of support avenues. We've included 6 for you, and also compiled a list of free resources that utilize those outreach styles. And I will mention that you will get, as one of the resources we are providing through our partnership with WCWI, a list that has the different outreach styles, but also different support, whether it's mental health crisis, suicidal crisis, domestic abuse support, general mental wellness education. So you can promote it on site and meet the various needs that your population is presenting right now. There are 2 questions in this section that closely relate. So we're going to give a couple of strategies and put them back to back. The first being, how can we promote mental health in the new remote or virtual structure? And closely related to that are, what are some ideas to help employees during this time where mainly there's virtual communication? So I'll first start that answer by sharing something that I've shared with our clients even pre-COVID, but now nevertheless is very true, and that's demonstrating leadership and communicating leadership support in times of crisis is a unique opportunity to build trust, boost morale, and secure workplace unity. So just because if all of, let's say, your employees are remote at this time, they can still feel a part of the organization and just as supported as they would have on site. One way to do that is to really, going back to what Marissa said, communicate by voicing your commitment to supporting employee mental health. And you can do that through your wellness committee. It's also very helpful and impactful if the pledge or commitment statement comes from top leaders. And to support you, we do have a communication piece and a commitment pledge that you can customize to meet your needs. You can put your EAP information in it as an example to help boost awareness and utilization rates. You can download that at our website. One company that is a Wisconsin employer and also a strong WCWI member is Baird & Company. And I'd like to share them as an example of a group that has done compassionate, supportive action throughout COVID and before COVID. And they've also utilized the second strategy to what we call protect minds in panic times, and that's equipping leaders with skills to support employee mental health. And that includes engaging remote employees and on-site employees. And the reason why this is so important is that not only does everyone have mental health and need to care for that, but the statistics tell us that employees living with a mental health condition or those that are struggling are more likely to actually disclose to a direct manager, direct supervisor than someone on their HR team. So really equipping them with skills to have stigma-free, compassionate responses, to appropriately handle those disclosures, etc., goes a long way in supporting the mental health and the employee's psychological safety, which is something we'll talk about later on. And if you want to look what that would look like in terms of educating managers and leaders across the board, and you're looking for inspiration, I encourage you to look at Baird & Company's approach and the results they've achieved. And you can do that by visiting our website under the Client Results tab, and you can see their approach and phenomenal results. So great inspiration. Transitioning to, and this also falls under the support theme we just talked about, and that's a supportive workplace culture that has a lasting positive impact. And the biggest challenge that was recorded right up against stigma was really embedding it into culture. So it's more than just a checked box program or 1-800 number that gets passed out, but businesses in general are facing unique challenges. And one of those challenges that we'll mention right here is how can you fund those mental health approaches and suicide prevention programs, professional trainings, etc., when budgets are tight? So I'll give you the simple answer, and then I'll give you some strategies to help achieve them. So the short answer is convey the value of supporting employee mental health to those deciding the budgets. So having them see the business impact, so it's a business priority as well, or simply said, AKA secure leadership buy-in. Now, if you're rolling your eyes and thinking, well, that's tougher said, done than said, I have a few strategies to help you get there. So one being highlight the increasing cost of why it's a business priority, especially when businesses are looking to retain clients and achieve productivity as well. So highlight the impact it has on absenteeism, presenteeism, productivity, and what that looks like really in dollars and cents. You can also look at your claim data to see if behavioral health claims are increasing and what the dollars and cents are specifically for your company. The other strategy to support that leadership buy-in is to show the ROI of supporting employee mental health. And maybe it's not a surprise to everyone in this meeting that what's good for people is good for business. So in a time where we're looking to support employee morale, unite employees that may not be face-to-face anymore, that is one way to do it, but it also has a ROI benefit of investing. And if you're looking for specific dollars and cents case studies of employers, the American Heart Association published a report called Mental Health, a Workforce in Crisis, and their data on ROI is phenomenal. So feel free to share that with your leaders as well. In addition, another strategy for this above and beyond getting that leadership commitment is to utilize a variety of funding sources. So as an example, when we work with employers for, let's say, manager training or developing crisis response protocols, that often comes out of safety budgets and professional development budgets. You, of course, can also contact your benefits provider. Make sure that all of your allotted wellness dollars are being utilized. And depending on your relationship with the benefits provider, they may be willing, we've seen this quite often, to sponsor a program or secure sponsorship and help you explore some of those opportunities. If you're a nonprofit, you can always look through SAMHSA grants as well. The next question is how to create and offer effective mental health programs when you have large, diverse populations. And I love this question. I feel like I could talk on it all day because the majority of employers we support, whether it's cities, counties, states, or businesses that have multiple diverse businesses, locations, etc., have that unique opportunity to serve a variety of populations. So I'll give a short answer, but then let's really dive into how to achieve that and what that looks like in workplaces. So the short answer is to address foundational needs first that are needs across your entire population, regardless of how diverse professionals that you're serving. Then strategically identifying and addressing the unique needs of those populations. So as an example, a foundational need that we see regardless of the industries we work in, whether it's education, even healthcare, manufacturing, finance, it really doesn't matter. And we know this from the data that you all submitted that the second biggest barrier was stigma. So regardless, most likely there's a need to alter stigmatizing attitudes and beliefs with compassionate, or I say stigma crushing messaging. An example of an employer that does this and did this very well is Quicken Loans, and they're a group I supported, and you can tell this is BC before COVID-19 because we're actually touching one another in person. But what they did was, as a part of their manager and leadership training and mental wellness symposium day, was something so small but had such a great resounding positive impact with employees. And that was, they did this throughout their company, but also one simple example in the name tags that they had for everyone, they gave compassionate messaging and a statement that helped overcome some of those common stigmatizing beliefs that we have. And there's a variety of messages that you can use, whether this is being used a lot in the COVID environment, which it's okay not to be okay, or this can be helpful as an example to help boost EAP utilizations, which is something that we'll be talking about a bit later, which is reaching out for support is a strength. We all need help sometimes. It's not a weakness. Again, transforming stigmatizing beliefs and attitudes that have been around for generations and changing communication styles to overcome those. So there are a variety here, and you can, whether you do a communication campaign, a stigma reduction campaign, newsletters, you integrate them in trainings, you include them in your diversity and inclusion commitments. If mental health isn't a part of, as an example, your resource groups or pledges. Those are just a few examples of how to do that. In regards to supporting diverse populations, so once you've dealt with several of the foundational needs, as one example that we just talked about, then identify those unique needs so you can strategically and effectively address them. So I could not think of a better example of an employer that does this, who is also affiliated and strongly tied in with WCWI, and that is Kohler Company. And we've worked with them for the last few years. And talk about diverse populations. They have a huge manufacturing population. They have hospitality, retail, you name it. And they have several under their umbrella. And when we first began working with them, we realized that it's not a one-size-fits-all program. Of course, each of them have diverse challenges and needs. So there's several ways that you can identify those needs and then strategically come up with a plan to address. So one way we did that with Kohler, as an example, was we facilitated focus groups throughout the different business sectors and multiple locations that they had, and really got that unbiased feedback from employees, which was eye-opening. So then we could move on to foundational needs and those unique needs that needed to be supported. There are other ways that you can do it besides focus groups, looking at claims data. If you have one location that is spiking in substance abuse claims, as an example, if you can segment them out, or one population where EAP is the lowest, and you find out that the stigma is much higher than some of your other locations, you can do targeted campaigns or initiatives. Also using simple tools like SurveyMonkey, and then segmenting the responses that you get so you can adjust accordingly. And if you're looking for more insight and inspiration, Kohler Company's approach and results are also as a downloadable case study that you can see, and I highly recommend it. Very, very insightful. Moving on to another question that really supports that overall culture, and that's recognizing the growing need for deeper integration. So how can you do that so it's a part of your everyday practices? And the second part of that question is, where is the best place to start? And I would be remiss if I came on as an expert and said that this is the one best place to start, because of course you are all coming from a variety of industries, your wellness programs are in different stages, etc. So I won't admit that there's one best place for every person that is attending, but what I will say is what we've seen across the board with the groups that we work with, other than manager training, to really build into that supportive everyday culture, the other strategy that is often missed is the organizational policies that are needed to protect the mental well-being and psychological safety of employees. And there are a variety that are important. We pulled the 3 that we see that are most often requested by employees, that are challenges that employers reached out to us and talked about. And that first and foremost is that return to work policy. So first, before COVID, it was return to work policies for employees reintegrating after a mental health related leave of absence. So do you have policies and procedures in place to set them up for a successful return to work experience? Also, now that employees are reintegrating back slowly, and perhaps you've already had some, how did you strategically address that? What are the policies for cleanliness and so employees feel safe? Also, looking at bullying and harassment policies is something that has become much more common in the last couple of years. And crisis response protocols that can be included alongside all of your other safety and response protocols. And we recommend, because they, especially with COVID, we're seeing spikes in mental health, suicidal, and substance abuse crisis in the workplace. Now, some of you may be looking at this list and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have any of those. And not to worry, we came prepared with support. So another resource that we're providing to WCWI to provide you all, since there were so many questions about increased mental health crisis, how would you respond in a remote situation, we did share the support referral process and crisis response protocols for remote employees. So that will be sent out and shared. We did segment it out between mental health and suicidal crisis. Feel free to share it with your HR teams, your leaders. If you are serving on-site employees or frontline employees, we do have process and protocols and policy procedures for that as well. If you're interested in those resources, you can explore everything that we have. We have a robust digital platform that you can utilize during this time, and that is through mentalwellbeingacademy.com. And I have to take a quick drink of water because I'm very parched. Marissa, any thoughts so far on what we've discussed?
You know, no additional thoughts to add, really. Mettie, thank you so much for taking us through all this. I do want to just make a note that if you, for our listeners, if you all are jotting down the resources that Mettie is highlighting, we will make sure to include all of those resources in our follow-up, or links to the resources that she's mentioned. So, so you can rest assured that you will have that in your inbox through our follow-up email.
Thank you, Marissa. So transitioning to psychological safety, and this is something that is really embedded in what we do and how we support employers, and it's becoming more and more talked about in workplaces across industry sectors. So there are several great questions here that we'll touch on, but first I wanted to touch on why psychological safety and why it's important right now more than ever. And so if you've been watching, and now it's not as publicized because COVID's getting most of the headlines, but even 2 days ago, NPR released a report, I'm so used to saying the word support, sometimes it just comes out, that Facebook had a settlement that they settled when the job function of the content moderators at their corporation was directly linked to PTSD. And other employers, and it's not just these two, if it's shown that the workplace, whether it's lack of policies or harassment, et cetera, if it can be linked to severe psychological damage, that employers are being held accountable. So it's something to proactively get in front of. This question really struck me because there was so much wisdom and just interesting feedback through this. So I'll give you a second to read it, and then I'll dive in and touch on the most important parts here. So several things that came top of mind here was that the impact of mental health on productivity, and we already looked at a statistic on that, but also feeling safe came forward. And then what really stuck out was managers / coworkers will assume they can't do their work if they're honest about what they're dealing with. So I'm going to give a short answer and then break down some strategies here, because it wasn't just in this person's question or company challenge. We saw this quite a bit in the questions and responses that came through. So I'll give the short answer first, which is really managing expectations to reflect the current situation that we're in. So the truth is, and Marissa mentioned this, that we all have mental health. It's a continuum, and none of us are 100% every single day. And that will impact our productivity at work. The second part of this is to replace misconceptions and stereotypes about what individuals that live with mental illness can succeed at or can accomplish. So as an example, that's a stereotype that it's an assumption that people with mental illness can't do their job or can't handle their workload or a promotion. Well, then that leads to prejudice of they're lazy or they just can't hack it. They shouldn't be in this position. And that leads to discrimination, unfortunately, which is whether they don't want to be on a person's team, whether they're not considered for a promotion, etc. So to replace that stereotype, and this really goes back to embedding this into culture, is educating your population that is a misconception and stereotype. The fact is that with effective support and treatment, employees that live with mental illness can be just as productive and successful as other employees. And also, as an example, with COVID-19, many people that never struggled with, let's say, things like depression and severe anxiety, this is a whole new realm for them, and it can be situational and temporary. So it's not that if someone is struggling, they'll always struggle. And that's something important to keep in mind and remind them of that as well. So there's several opportunities that you could take here to address stereotypes and reduce stigma, and whether that's some mass communication campaigns that we talked about, providing training to your leaders about things like unconscious bias or common stereotypes. Also establishing peer or employee resource groups, so having ones that are dedicated to mental health support, those living with disabilities, those that are millennials looking for leadership support, a peer-to-peer. Marissa, what is the word I'm thinking about where a senior person connects? Mentorship program is where I was going with that.
Yeah.
My coffee apparently has not kicked in yet. So there's a variety of ways that they can feel supported and help break down some of those misconceptions. So what are those signs to look out for? So employees that are in distress, whether that's remote or on-site, what should we be aware of? Because if this has also been in the news that, none of us were prepared for the coronavirus pandemic, but we can be prepared for the subsequent impact it will have on our population, particularly their mental well-being. So recognizing the warning signs, and my digital education coordinator, she actually broke this down for us in 3 ways that we're seeing the biggest spikes in the workplace, from mental health crisis, substance abuse, and suicidal crisis. And I would definitely share these warning signs with your employees in general, and then also share those response protocols and procedures with your managers, so they know if they do see an employee through video chat that are examining or experiencing some of these, that they can appropriately respond. So moving on to boosting utilization of resources and crushing stigma, which will of course support all of the other questions and all of the other strategies that we talked about. So even though we segmented them into 4 different themes, they're all very closely related, and many connecting to current challenges and stressors that businesses and employees are under. So the first one being, what is the most effective way to develop a strategy to overcome the stigma associated with mental health and suicide prevention? Well, the short answer here, and then I'll go into what that actually looks like, is to recognize and address the 3 types of stigma that exist. So anytime we're developing a stigma-free campaign for an employer or doing any sort of mental health program, we really look at the 3 types of stigma to see, and this goes back to your diverse populations as well. Some of your locations or business segments may be dealing with or have stronger stigmas in one area, whether that's social stigmas, self-stigmas, or one area may have a much stronger structural stigma issue that is driving low employee support and low program utilization. So for those that may not be as comfortable with really what the diverse stigma spectrum looks like, we did break these down here for you. And in most cases, in most workplaces and families even, all are present to some degree. So whether it's just the social disapproval and discrimination, we talked a little bit about that earlier in the presentation. Whether it's the self-stigma of feeling weak to admit that we might need support. And that was one of the questions that came through, is how do we help employees feel comfortable to disclose to a leader if they need support? And everything we're talking about today, whether it's the stigma-free, compassionate messaging, or breaking down those misconceptions of it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. And then where we really support employers, and typically where we see the strongest need, is the structural stigma. So supporting cultural norms in institutional practices, which also comes down to the policies and the procedures that you have that are established throughout your organization, which of course goes back into that deeper integration. So we looked at strategies to help break down, regardless if you're dealing with all 3 or you're seeing that one is really a significant need the most. So there's several ways that you can help reduce that. We've included a few on here. One that we see that makes a significant difference is to really start equalizing your wellness initiatives. So spending just as much emphasis, resource, timing, etc., on mental well-being as you are with your employees' physical health as well. So creating a 1-to-1 ratio. If you do a lunch and learn on heart health, you do a lunch and learn on stress relief, etc., 1-to-1. You can also pledge to be a stigma-free workplace. We have a tab on our website that shows what stigma-free workplaces that pledge that commitment, what that looks like. NAMI also has, NAMI.org has some great information on that pledge. Stigma-free language that's appropriate in the workplace, also very helpful for employees to feel more comfortable talking about mental health or needs that they have. And then the last one that I'll touch on, which seems very simple but has a huge impact, is not just promoting either the support lists that Marissa will share with you that we created, or posting EAP, not just on your wellness board or in your HR department. Employees, and they tell me this typically via focus groups, is that they don't want to go to those areas to get the support resource information, because then they think that their coworkers will think that they have an issue and that they'll be judged. So if you can put them up in every department, in offices, on the back of bathroom stalls, you're really normalizing help-seeking behavior and also saying it's okay. We all need support and it's readily available. So simple strategies, significant impact we've seen in workplaces time and time again. So this one was a two-parter, and we get asked this a lot, which is, why are EAP services so underutilized, and how can we support and encourage participation? So, of course, one of the main reasons are the three stigmas that we broke down and discussed. Also, lack of knowledge of what is offered, especially if in the past you have used EAP only or mainly for disciplinary issues. It can be lack of knowledge of knowing all of the ways EAP can support. I remember doing a training right before COVID at an organization who very committed to wellness. They have a very robust EAP promotion. There's flyers, and as I was speaking, somebody interrupted and said, "I'm sorry, what is an EAP? I didn't know we had that here." And the wellness coordinator just about fell out of her seat, could not believe that somebody that had been there for years, it just completely went above them. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Also, having those diverse outreach avenues that we talked about. So if right now there's only a 1-800 number, ask your EAP provider what other services. Do they have text lines that are available? Do they have chat functions? So you can start meeting employees where they're the most comfortable. So to answer that as well, I started with the increasing utilization even before I flipped, but these are also three ways that we have seen that have made the biggest increase and we've seen even tripling utilizations in some employers. One, especially if you seem to have a negative employee outlook or attitude on EAP, consider rebranding how you even talk about it or market it. So one of our employers is an airport, and they were struggling with that. So instead, earlier this year, they changed. They don't say EAP. They don't even put that on flyers, posters. It's called Safe Landings. And now, even if managers are promoting it, that's something that they were trained on. They say, "Hey, remember Safe Landings." So it's a small change, but it's significantly boosted their utilization. We also talked about several strategies of how to normalize help seeking, which will help. And then also train managers so they're comfortable and confident promoting EAP. Not that it's just a negative thing, but, empathetically, if an employee comes to them and does open up, recognizing, thank you. for being brave enough to talk to me about that, and know that you have my support. I'm not the best person, however, to support you. Would you like me to connect you to our EAP services, or would you like me to get you that information? So they're comfortable, and they have that as a tool that they can use to support employees. And if you want support in that area of how to train managers to be comfortable with that, or how to have a fully digital, robust mental well-being program, I'd be happy to talk to you, or Sam Van Nuys would, from our team, of what's available and how we can help you with all these goals that were mentioned in today's presentation. If you have any questions at all, or you are looking for a customized approach, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect one-on-one.
Thank you so much, Mettie. This was fantastic, really. I want to ask, I mean, we do have a few remaining minutes in our time with Mettie here with us. I do want to ask if there are any other questions that bubbled up for those of you on the line with us today. If so, please feel welcome to put that in the chat, and we will take a look at that here over the next couple of minutes. I wanted to mention that one thing that, Mettie, that you said that really stuck out to me, as I think I just really appreciate the phrasing around it that you used, and that was the concept of normalizing help-seeking behavior. I think that is one, again, the phrasing of that just really hit me as a fantastic way to frame, you know, it's very normal for people to seek help in, you know, wanting to exercise more, or wanting, you know, help to, you know, eat a little bit more nutritiously or healthy, and you know, we would never turn someone away or not, you know, encourage those types of help seeking. And so I just really appreciated that frame, and then of course the examples that you gave for how to do that. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. Glad that stuck out. And there could be something going on in the chat. I, for some reason, am not pulling it up. So if you see something, Marissa, Katie, anybody, feel free to send that out. For some reason, I can't pull up the chat bar.
No problem. I do have it up, and we're taking a look. I don't see any questions come through just yet, but I do also want to mention if your specific question wasn't focused on in today's webinar, because like I said, we did have a little over 30 total questions, and then of course working with Mettie, we had to pare that down for time's sake, but we gratefully have an ongoing partnership with Mettie, and there will be other opportunities for us to tap in to her expertise on this and circle back to some of those other questions that were submitted through the survey. So please know that all questions were valuable. Just of course for today, this is where we focused. Additionally, I will be sending, or the WCWI team will be sending out a summary, a more robust summary of that survey. There were some excellent submissions of what employers are doing currently to support mental health. So there are some great ideas in there of how people are supporting during this time and just in general. And that will be summarized in that resource, as well as you know, linking some of these resources that Mettie mentioned today. So please know that that's coming to you as well. All right.
Thank you for
Mettie,
sending
anything
that.
else you wanted? Oh, of course. Anything else you wanted to say? Any last words for our group today?
Well, I just thank everyone for taking their time to spend with us, and really in support and investment in their employees. And I know that everyone here has that deep commitment, and I'd like to acknowledge that, because it's something that's so important and impactful, and now more than ever it's needed. And yes, we're happy to to your point, Marissa, we have quite a few things on the schedule this year, an expert interview, a coffee chat coming up that will be scheduled. So we'll continue to address these, but you're more than welcome to reach out to WCWI or myself to answer any specific questions, or if you need a specific resource, because we're just really here to support you and your population. So don't hesitate to reach out, and also feel free to share what was the most helpful today so we know what you'd like more of, so we can help you with those resources.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining. I think we can give everybody maybe a couple minutes back in their day this afternoon. Mettie, I just want to say again, thank you so much for your partnership and your time, energy, and talent sharing with us and all of our member community. We are very appreciative.
Well, thank you, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.